Happy first week of Advent. Advent has begun. Christmas is coming. Christ is near. Today, we talk about the Holy Father, the Vicar of Christ, takes the world stage. He just got back to Rome, as well as we are on the brink of war, so it seems, in Venezuela and other parts of the world. This is an edition of Catholic Champion. I'm your host, John Yep, co-host Michael Hichborn. Stay tuned. How is your Advent, Michael?
Just beginning.
It's the way it is. Exactly.
Yep.
Christ is coming. Christ is near. The it's obviously we all love this time of year. It's super important, and what amazes me just too is the amount of attention that we really are a Christian country, right? We are a Christian country. At the same time, we're also losing that fast. Case in point, Catholics for Catholics offices. We rent offices at a major office building here, and up until about like 2 years ago, like every single year, they would decorate all 5 stories of the office building with Christmas decorations, right? And then in the past 2 years, suddenly stopped. Done. No more decorating for Christmas. Also, coincidentally, they took down the main 20-foot American flag that used to stand right outside the building. So, coincidence? I don't know. But I think that it does, it's almost like a bellwether in some ways. Again, like we are a Christian country, but losing it fast if we don't fight for it. I mean, does that kind of pair a little bit from what you've seen? Would you agree with that?
It depends on where you go. I mean, when even downtown Fredericksburg, which is near where I live in Virginia, it's a very, very liberal town. But down the main street, they've got all kinds of Christmas decorations out there. I mean, the storefronts out there go all out every year, and the decorations are. I mean, it's all secular Christmas stuff. It always has been, but even still, I mean, they're pretty decked out with Christmas spirit celebration kind of stuff. So, I'm not so sure that it's everywhere. Obviously, in some places, you're experiencing it, but I think that there's a movement to try and quiet Christmas, and that's what we're up against.
Subtle and also very direct. Considering, look what the Muslim immigrants did in Germany. Like the last week was in Hamburg. They just they completely rushed the Christmas market and just created a ruckus and intimidation for anyone who was there at the enjoying the festivities. So it's subtle and then also very direct. So we're gonna get into that too, just about what's going on with immigration. It continues to be a very hot topic. Now, you may have been following that the Pope was on the world stage. He took a trip. Is this his first trip that he's done outside of Rome?
It might be.
Okay. So he goes, Pope Leo goes on this trip, and he went for this primarily main reason was ecumenical. He went there for the 17th anniversary of the Council of Nicaea in 325, when all factions agreed and produced the Nicene Creed, which we say every single Sunday at church, right? And so he went there to commemorate that specific event there in Constantinople. Taylor Marshall made a great point. Like, forget this calling it Istanbul anymore. Let's just call it Constantinople. I tend to agree, Taylor. And so he was there, and then went from Turkey over to the Holy Land or Lebanon, and saw the Christian communities there. And it was by all accounts, or a lot of let's say it was a very fruitful and beautiful trip. So, as always, is not like the papal tradition. Did this start, by the way, with Francis, with the post interviews on the airplanes, or did that go to Benedict?
I think Benedict had a couple of interviews, but they weren't so prominent. I think it was on one of these interviews. In fact, it was an airline interview.
The AIDS one.
Yes. That's where I was going with that.
Explain that. Go.
Well, it was alleged that Pope Benedict had signaled a change in Catholic teaching that somehow, in some way, it was going to be acceptable for people to use condoms in order to avoid contracting HIV and AIDS. That's not what he said by any stretch. He was speaking on a rather high level degree of moral theology pertaining to intent or act of the will, and that example is what was suggested by the questioner, and then of course they just took that and ran with it. But this, I have to say, this is why I say that the popes should not.
Get ready, he's gonna say it. Michael Hichborn like papal interviews.
I hate them. I hate papal interviews. They shouldn't be happening. It's not my job to pay attention to every single word and jot and tittle that comes out of the Pope's mouth. What has to happen is the Pope needs to teach from his official position as the Pope, and teach to the church, not just to local ideologies and the general zeitgeist, and give maybe a general statement about certain thoughts or problems facing the world, but to be very specific and to say, this is what we as practicing Catholics believe, and this is why we believe it, and this is how we should be living our lives according to these teachings. These papal interviews are the most worthless thing that could come out of this office, and I would dare say that they are the most dangerous thing that the Pope could do coming out of this office.
You would say that, even considering the and this is a marvel to me. You know, you kind of have to step back a little bit and just understand, as secular as the world is, I mean, he's going to a predominantly Muslim area, all right? That there was so much attention placed on him, and the geopolitical role. Here we are in 2025, 1700 years after the Council of Nicaea, 2,000 years later, or 1700 years later. You know, the geopolitical role of the pontiff is still so much prevalent, right? I mean, look at these questions, and we're gonna go through some of these questions. Look what he addressed. Like they pulled him in. Like they definitely see him. Although I love how the Pope clarified from the beginning. Look, I didn't go for to be primarily just to bring peace to the region. I came to reaffirm our faith and in support of true ecumenical dialogue. Okay. But they really they took advantage of reporters. So let's play that first question to give you kind of a feel for what the Pope went through in that interview.
You are an American Pope leading a peace process. You're on a peace mission in the region. My question is, will you use your connections with President Donald Trump, with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and you've stated on the plane before that the Vatican is friends with Israel. Will you raise the need to halt Israeli aggressions against Lebanon? And is sustainable peace achievable in the region?
First of all, yes, I believe sustainable peace is achievable. I think that when we talk about hope and we talk about peace and we look to the future, we do so because I believe it is possible that peace once again come to the region, come to your country, to Lebanon. In fact, I've already, in a very small way, begun a few conversations with some of the leaders of places that you have mentioned, and I would intend to continue to do that personally or through the Holy See, because the fact is that we do have diplomatic relationships with most of the countries through the region, and it would be our hope certainly to continue to raise that call for peace that I spoke of at the very end of the Mass today.
Cut there. So, you know, it goes on to also the Pope. They ask him again. They ask him later on as well. They ask him about Russia-Ukraine war, and the Pope said the following. He said, "This is obviously an important issue for peace in the world, but the Holy See does not have direct involvement because we are not members of NATO nor of any other talk so far. And now there's a war with many aspects, with the increase in arms, all the armaments production going on, cyber attacks, energy. The winter's coming. There's a serious problem there." And then it goes on and says, "It is clear that on the one hand, the President of the United States is thinking he can promote a peace plan that he would like to carry out, and that, at least at first, is without Europe. But Europe's presence is important, and that first proposal was also modified because of what Europe was saying. In this sense, I could suggest the Holy See might encourage this kind of mediation with Russia, or that the United States work with Europe essentially, right, for this peace solution for the war in Ukraine. So, I mean, I know you don't like it. I get it, and I think there's how about this for pushback though? In such a very formal environment now, where everything comes out in papal documents and encyclicals or whatever, where a lot of times we don't really even know if the Pope actually wrote it, right? There's ghostwriters. It's partly from Francis, and right. So it's like, I mean, he's got a stamp of approval. So there is an element of like, this is the man that the Holy Spirit chose to lead us. It is kind of nice sometimes.
That's
just
false.
to hear it.
That's false. That's
What's
false.
That? Go ahead.
At a conclave, the Holy Spirit does not choose the Pope.
Permissive will.
Yes.
Permissive will.
It's such an important point to make, though.
Right.
People
Permissively.
say, no, the Holy Spirit chose him, so therefore he's the chosen one. No, that's not the case. It's like marriage. Yeah. If you choose your spouse and you go to get married to this person, God does not choose your spouse for you. He confirms the choice and the vow that you make.
Fair. Good point. Okay. And I agree with that. It's good clarification and important clarification too, as well. So, even for understanding obedience, how that works too, right? So he is the man that's there and now, and it is great to hear from his own mouth at times what is actually in his thought process. And we kind of get that a little bit with these papal interviews. And it's not all just about geopolitics, right? Because the very last question was actually, for me, I was refreshing to hear that, right? And when he talked about the synodal way, would you agree with that, Michael?
When it comes to diplomatic relations, the first question that I ask is, what is the relationship that the individual speaking has with the region in discussion? If you're talking about, let's say, on the farthest side of the Eastern world, someplace in Sri Lanka or in China, if you don't have any understanding of the two factions involved, you don't understand the two sides, you don't understand the issues involved, you don't really have a place in speaking on this matter. And I would say that somebody who is stepping in from a religious perspective to a secular situation isn't really helping or hurting the situation. They're just adding more noise to what's already being discussed. I don't see what the point of having the Pope involved in geopolitical relations really would be. I don't see the point to it.
They can help.
What moral voice could he possibly offer to a secular that doesn't care what the Pope says?
However, historically, though, the Pope has helped to bring peace to the world. At least his efforts have,
when we had a Christian world.
True, but also not necessarily. I mean, you think about what
Pope ever been involved in negotiations between pagan nations?
John Paul II had an instrumental role in ending the Falklands War, Argentina and England, 1987. I mean, England, okay, I guess they're Christian, right? So, he played a role there. I mean, and sometimes the reality too is that even if you don't believe that the Pope or the Catholic Church is the Christ Church, okay, and you're a total pagan, you're a total atheist, you can sometimes see them as a neutral party, right? As a place, right? And use that accordingly, right? So, I mean, would you agree with that?
I
mean, look at the World War I too. I mean, look at Benedict the 15th.
Mm-hmm.
It was.
Did he stop the war?
What's that?
Did he stop the war?
He got close. I mean,
close only works in hand grenades and nukes,
right?
I'm sorry. The thing is, the papacy, when it comes to geopolitics, always had a hand in the relationships primarily in Europe. And the relationships that would take place were between Christian kings, meaning Catholic kings. Once the Protestant revolt came around and the Pope, said, okay, you're a Protestant nation or you're a Protestant king, you're excommunicated, et cetera, et cetera. His authority, or not his temporal authority in having any kind of persuasive measure in stopping any aggression coming from that Protestant territory ended. It's kind of like the old adage that your authority ends where your ability to have your commands or your orders executed begins.
Mhm.
So if you cannot issue a command or provide any kind of real force, and this is just an understanding of politics, okay? If you don't have the ability to inflict some sort of coercive measure against your opponent, then you don't really have influence. And the influence of the papacy with regard to international relations in Europe, going back thousands of years, has everything to do with the Pope's ability and authority to call an interdict, or to say, okay, you people do not have an obligation to follow these illicit orders from your king saying to go to war, and I command you not to. That was real authority, and that was real influence. Now it's just a matter of secular politics and an appeal to somebody's better nature, which could happen from anyone. So I don't see the point of having the Pope involved in geopolitics unless you're going to say he has real moral authority.
But what about the collapse of communism? I mean, look at that. Look at John Paul II did with he never came out with a pontifical.
Was it his geopolitical positions that did it, or was it economic sanctions combined with the spiritual influence that he had to call people to pray for an end to communism? I don't think that it was his influential authority. I mean, the communists didn't care what John Paul II said.
It was a combo. It was a healthy interaction with the United States, Ronald Reagan, right?
It was an amplifying factor for Ronald Reagan and for the West in calling for an end to communism. But it wasn't, the communists in power really didn't care. They did not care what the Pope said, had no influence on them whatsoever. The difference when the Pope would call for,
they care with I mean, I would disagree a little bit. I mean, look at, they cared about what he did. They absolutely did, and they cared about what the people thought that he, in June 1979, 14 days to change the world, right? When he went there on his first trip. And I would argue that they actually cared about him so much that they,
right, the Soviets threw the people in gulags, they threw them in prison because they were.
And they tried to shoot John Paul II October 13, 1981, right?
They did
what's that?
They did shoot him.
Yeah, right. So yeah, exactly. So I think they are conscious of, I mean, it's a fine line to play. And I think we're trying to nail that, what that thread is, because you can go too overboard and lose your kind of your moral sense of like, okay, at the end of the day, I'm supposed to teach and live out or confirm the flock and the teachings of Jesus Christ, right? That's the main thing. But you are going to have an influence. You absolutely are.
I'm not saying that he doesn't have an influence. I'm just saying that in terms of geopolitics, first of all, it's not the job of the Pope to go around and try and broker peace across national lines. That's not his job. It has nothing to do with his office. His office is to shepherd the flock of the faithful and to draw all souls to Christ. That's his mission. And when he starts playing politics instead of working towards the salvation of souls, you're going to lose your mission. And it's called mission creep in business. But in the church, it's Peter losing sight of the cross, losing sight of Christ, and starting to sink into the waters. What do the waters represent in this episode of Peter's life? The world. Stop taking account of the wind and the rain. Stop taking account of the waves. Pay attention to Christ and lead your people to him. And as long as that's what you're doing, fine. But I am not in favor of the Pope playing geopolitician. Never have been.
And to our Holy Father's credit, we're thanking for this. I think he did a great job clarifying after one of these geopolitical questions. He said, look, quote, one aspect of this journey, which was not the main reason, because the visit was conceived with ecumenical questions in mind, with the theme of Nicaea, the meeting with the Catholic Orthodox patriarchs, the search for unity in the church. But in fact, kind of as a side note, I had the chance to have personal encounters with representatives of different groups who represent political authorities, right? So I think he did a great job, and that purpose was clear. He went there for Christ. Now, it's always going to be the nature of the world that doesn't understand the papacy, that they're going to want to try to get a political capital out of that move or out of that decision, right? So I think for the most part in this interview, he handled it very well, and I think he did a good job. But all your points are totally valid and make sense. Can we shift over to what he said? I'm going to play this clip, and this has to do with it's the phenomenon which is not going to go away. Okay, it started in the 600s. Okay, with the birth of Islam. Okay, and Christian Europe pushed back on infiltration there for through the Reconquista and so many other battles. Battle of Venice or Battle of Vienna, 1688, Battle of Lepanto. You get where I'm going at. Christendom has always been at odds, for understandable reasons, with the followers of Muhammad. Okay. Well, since Christendom has let its guard down in the last 50, 60, 70 years, they have Reconquista. They have come across all over Europe, right? So it's a looming threat. It's all over us now. It's gone across the ocean. It's in Dearborn, Michigan. It's in the mayor of New York, right? And it's in this individual that just shot 2 of our National Guard soldiers in Washington, D.C. Okay, so the threat is there. Now, what is this threat? What is the proper relationship between Christianity and Islam? Okay, the Pope was basically asked about this question. Let's hear what the Pope had to say.
Some Catholics in Europe believe that Islam is a threat to a Christian identity of the West. Are they right? And what would you say to them?
All of the conversations that I had during my time both in Turkey and in Lebanon, including with many Muslims, were precisely concentrated on the topic of peace and respect for people of different religions. I know that, as a matter of fact, that has not always been the case. I know that in Europe there are many times fears that are present but oftentimes generated by people who are against immigration and trying to keep out people who may be from another country, another religion, another race. And in that sense, I would say that we all need to work together. One of the values of this trip is precisely to raise the world's attention to the possibility that dialogue and friendship between Muslims and Christians is possible. I think one of the great lessons that Lebanon can teach to the world is precisely showing a land where Islam, Christianity are both present and are respected, and that there is a possibility to live together, to be friends. Stories, testimony, witnesses that we heard even in the past 2 days of people helping each other, Christians with Muslims, both of whom had their villages destroyed, for example, of saying we can come together and work together. I think those are lessons that would be important also that we heard in Europe or North America, that we should perhaps be a little less fearful and look for ways of promoting authentic dialogue and respect.
Michael,
A heartfelt appreciation.
how do you think he answered that? Or
he answered it like a politician. I mean, the fact of the matter is peace with Christ means enmity with the world. This idea that you can have peaceful coexistence between Christians and Muslims is false, because Islam is, you have to understand, the word Islam itself means submission.
That's right.
The whole point is to subdue the world. They will always work towards subduing the world. You can't have a peaceful coexistence. It's not possible. The call of the Christian is to evangelize, to draw all souls to Christ. The call of the Muslim is to subdue the world and to force them to follow Muhammad. You can't have peace with that. They are diametrically opposed. This idea that you can have a peaceful coexistence is false. You can have a tentative coexistence. You can have a tolerant coexistence, but you cannot have a peaceful coexistence. And this is the problem. They're using this word peace, but what do they mean by peace? Do they simply mean nonviolence? Because nonviolence doesn't mean peace. You can have nonviolence in a marriage, but a lot of tension. This idea of peace, there's only one kind of peace. And from the papacy, the understanding of peace has to begin with Christ. My peace I give you, my peace I leave to you. Not the peace that the world gives to you. Okay? The peace of Christ means resting in the Lord without conflict. You don't have that internal conflict with God, because you are embracing and accepting of everything that he has taught and everything that he draws you to. If you want peace with the world, you will have enmity with God. That's the only answer. So I can't stress enough that this call to peace and peaceful coexistence and dialogue. Look, if you want to have international conversations with Muslims and Muslim nations, that's fine. But this idea that we have to start importing Muslims into our Christian culture, where there will be conflict by design, is not only a false ideology, but it's a dangerous precedent. You are facilitating an invasion. That's the only way you can really view this.
Just compare, who was the Pope during Battle of Lepanto?
Pius V.
Okay, Pius V, who's buried in St. Peter's, I think, actually. So Pius V, how would he have answered that question?
How would he have answered the question that was asked by the journalist?
I mean, I think that there's a different way approach a little bit to this. Pius V obviously is the one who called for Christians to arms, right, and to go and do battle against the Muslim fleet that was attacking Christian Europe, right?
He created the Holy League.
Created the Holy League, okay? Explain that. What exactly that was?
The Holy League was kind of a ragtag fleet put together by a bunch of different duchies and minor kingdoms in order to fight the invading Islamists from Turkey. And these were countries that didn't really get along too well. So they were kind of put together by the Pope and sent by the Pope, and he instructed them to go into battle and to stop this invading fleet. And then he instructed all of Christendom to pray the rosary daily for victory. And this is where we get Our Lady of Victory, Our Lady of the Rosary, because of the victory at the Battle of Lepanto on October 7th, 1571. This understanding that, or this idea that you can have a peaceful coexistence with Islam, I think that if Pope Pius V was asked that question, he would have laughed, and he would have said, no, that's not possible. You cannot allow people with an ideology so inimical to Christian thought to enter into our society. I mean, what does it say in Scripture about how to handle heretics? It says to cast them out. It says to cast them out. You can't have them in your midst. Why? Because they corrupt. And when you have this idea that you can bring in an ideology, which is a heresy, okay? Islam is a heresy. It's not a false, it's not a new religion. It is a heresy. It's categorized as a heresy by the church. When you introduce that heresy into the church, what you wind up doing is perverting the teachings of the church. And there are saints, countless saints. Pelayo, who was the last Spanish king as the Muslims invaded Spain, all the way up to northern Spain. He was up in a mountain, and the Muslims had so conquered Spain that he was the last holdout. And he was up in the mountains. He had, a small army with him, but not many, certainly not many compared to the numbers that the Muslims had. And the Muslims continued to try and beat him back and to put an end to his resistance. Couldn't do it. So they found the local bishop, and they sent the local bishop to have a dialogue with Pelayo. And he said, look, if you convert, you'll have not only kingdoms, but you can practice your faith. You can still have your faith, but just don't resist us, and pay our taxes, because that's what we demand. And everything will be fine. And we'll make sure that you're well fed and you have all the stuff for your people that you could possibly want. And Pelayo told him to go pound sand.
There you go. I mean, it's the situation is obviously extremely nuanced and difficult, because we have Europe, right, which has basically been almost overrun completely by followers of Muhammad. Okay. And we in our minds can have this idea that it's going to be nonviolent. Okay. We want to have a nonviolent coexistence, which doesn't really philosophically work with their religion as it is, right? Because they're literally directed to kill the infidel, right? And overrun, right? So it's it's a tenuous situation. And what I just think that I mean, apart from like Cardinal Sarah, who's been kind of strong about that, speaking of what's going on in Europe, and a few others, right? Bishop Athanasius Schneider, like just speaking up about the amount of what this has done, like how many churches have been destroyed, right, across Europe, burned.
I was just going to bring that up. You know, over 1,000 churches now have been burned across Europe by Muslims. And why is Pope Leo?
Why are we not speaking up? It's a joke. Like, what is going on?
Why is Pope Leo directing his comments to the Christian world and saying we have to be accepting, instead of turning to the Muslims and saying, these are your hosts?
That's right.
These people in Europe invited you in, and you are burning their churches. You are burning our churches. You are attacking our people. You are upsetting our Christian order for your Muslim the spread of Islam. It's not even clear why they're doing it, except in terms that they hate what Catholics and what the church represents. So this idea that we have to be the ones who are accepting and tolerant, and they don't have to give anything. They don't have to stop burning our churches, stop attacking our women. Why isn't he chastising them? Why isn't he castigating them? Why is it always on us?
Or there is a lack of adaptation into the culture that they come. They don't assimilate. That's kind of right. So
that's not what Islam does. Yeah.
If you're going to immigrate, if you're going to join another nation, you have a duty to integrate with the nation's culture, right? Nature's ways, the religion, the culture, whatever, right? So, and that doesn't happen, right? Prove it's in Europe. There's the whole ghettos in Paris, right, where the police don't even go; they just stay away from, right, because they've taken over, right? So I think it's that point worries me. I think we have to speak up a lot more clearly, loudly, because it is a threat. Okay, threat to us at Western civilization. Christianity is not compatible with Islam. Constitutional law in the United States is not compatible with Sharia law, right? So it's a threat. Right. We got to address that. Last questions on the Pope's interview, and this had to do with the Synodal Way, which obviously we are been very outspoken here at Catholics for Catholics with our book that we produced, The Trojan Horse in the Catholic Church, written by a mysterious priest under a pseudonym because he can't reveal his identity, but the foreword was written by Cardinal Gerhard Mueller, right? And it's about the attempt to invert the Bride of Christ hierarchy and moral order, which is what this whole synod on synodality really does, right? So we published that book, and a lot of you donated to get a book into the hands of every single bishop here in the United States, and we did that. So thank you very much for your support. But this continues to be kind of a benchmark, like it was for Francis' pontificate, into Pope Leo's pontificate. Now, he did address something about the Synodal Way. Let's take a listen and have you comment on it, Michael.
The Middle East, with all its tears and wounds and challenges and past history, can give the church in the West and the world.
Okay. Let me preface my response by saying that today, people who grew up in a very individualistic society, young people who passed a very significant amount of time during the pandemic because of COVID, and whose personal relationships are oftentimes very isolated in reality because they're only through computer screens or smartphones. They ask sometimes, why should we want to be one? I'm an individual and I don't care about others. And I think there's a very important message here to say to.
We're going to get the right question. It's a question right before this. Talk about the Synodal Way.
Mm-hmm.
Here we go. He's going to speak specifically about what's going on in Germany, because the German church has been going all out with the Synodal Way. What do you expect, right? So the Pope was asked specifically about this, and he pulls it in. I'm going to read just as we get this video ready what he actually says here. We got it.
this can be a way to strengthen the church in Germany, or is it the other way around, and why?
The synodal way is not unique to Germany. The whole church has celebrated a synod and synodality over the past several years. There are some great similarities, but there are also some marked differences between how the Synodal Weg in Germany has been carried forward and how it may well continue in the universal church. On the one hand, I would say there is room certainly for respect for enculturation. The fact that in one place synodality is lived in a certain way and in another place is lived differently does not mean that there will be rupture or a fracture. I think that's very important to remember. At the same time, I'm aware that many Catholics in Germany believe that certain aspects of the synodal way that has been celebrated in Germany up until now do not represent their own hope for the church or their own way of living church. So there's need for further dialogue and listening within Germany itself so that no one's voice is excluded, so that the voice of those who are more powerful does not silence or stifle the voice of those who might also be very numerous but don't have a place to speak up and to allow their own voices and own expression of church participation to be listened to. At the same time, as you know, I'm sure, the German group.
Michael, thoughts on that?
So listen to the subtext. He's not so much attacking the German synodal way as he is defending synodality itself. And this is a problem. It's a very serious problem, because the whole idea of synodality is to change the way the church governs. It's about establishing these networks so that you have all these different voices just offering their opinions and offering their thoughts and saying, look, we need to address this issue or that issue, and we want to try and think about maybe the church in a different way doing this, or the church in a different way doing that. And it's what is the end goal? Okay, the end goal of synodality is to say that the church is no longer a hierarchy, but something else. It's a new way of thinking about governance, and saying that we have to govern from among ourselves and have kind of a almost like a melting pot of ideas within the church. And this is it's not only wrong, it's dangerous, because what you're doing now is you're giving voice to extremely false ideologies. I mean, what is the German synodal way all about but women's ordination in the LGBTQ whatever issue? And they're saying, oh no, we have to embrace and welcome in all of the sexual perversions that we possibly can. And then of course, on top of that, saying we want to have women's ordination. We want to make sure that women can have a voice in the church, etc. And so instead of saying that this is as I heard recently in a different interview, this is a feature, not a bug. That's the nature of synodality. And he can't possibly criticize the German synodal way without saying that there's a certain problem with this synodal approach itself.
That's a great point. It's not so much it was a defense of synodality, essentially, right? Because his quote, which again, it just made me really kind of nervous. And maybe the Holy Father can just correct that or address that, because this is what he says. He says, I'm aware that many Catholics in Germany believe that certain aspects of the synodal way that has been celebrated in Germany up till now do not represent their own hope for their church or their own way of living the church. What does that mean? There's only one way to live the church, right? It's right. We're united. We're one, right? So it's opening ourselves up for, I understand that that's kind of the it's the package that the Francis pontificate delivered to Pope Leo, and he's been coming to having to handle this and make a decision if he's going to continue with it. By all we've seen so far, it seems like he is going to continue this synodal journey, right? And which we think is dangerous, right, for who the church is, right?
Well, completely. I mean, the church is a hierarchy. She always has been. But even if just go through the final document for the Synod on Synodality from last October. And what the final document states is that we want to reimagine the papacy, and we want to recreate the church in the style of the synods of the East, which was the first era of Russia, to reject the papacy and to create a synodal church. So if we're going to talk about the situation that's taking place right now, we have to understand that this is not just a new way of dialogue and listening and being listened to and that kind of thing. Who cares? It doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, the church has a head. She has a head, she has a voice, she has a body. And the body has to follow what the head does, what it thinks, what it judges, and how it proceeds. The body necessarily falls from that. But here they're saying the body has to rebel against the head and tell the head, look, we're not gonna eat, salad and steak. We're gonna eat candy for breakfast, and that's all we're gonna eat. And it's disordered. It's completely disordered.
It's completely disordered, and it's being used to quote Fulton Sheen's expression, is becoming the ape of the church, right? It's this church that we don't recognize. It's not the church of our fathers that we've seen for hundreds and back to the time of the apostles, right? So I think it's important, and that's why I'm grateful that we were able to produce this book. It's our effort to speak up to our bishops, to make our voices heard about what this is. It's an extremely well-written book. Again, endorsed or the foreword is written by Cardinal Gerhard Mueller, who is the former head of the Doctrine of the Faith. So that's what we have to do as Catholics, to speak up when we have these kind of concerns in a respectful, holy, bold way. Shifting over to a different thing with immigration. Okay. Our next topic. This continues to be front and center. We kind of briefly addressed it with the Pope's question on the coexistence between Islam and Christianity. Is it possible? Is it compatible? Over the weekend, the day before Thanksgiving, okay, we were all ready to go into our celebration parties for our families, whatever. And what happened? DC, you had this lone gunman who walked up, 2 National Guard soldiers. One was a young female, and just shot him point blank, right in the head, and the other like in the shoulder. Okay. West Virginia National Guardsman Andrew Wolf, surviving victim of last week's ambush near the White House, has been upgraded from critical to serious condition and is showing signs of responsiveness. So that's good news. But obviously, the young lady, Sarah Beckstrom, 20, died from her injuries after Munala Lakhanwal, 29-year-old Afghan national, ambushed 2 of these soldiers in D.C., just blocked from the White House. Okay, so this syncs with what we were talking about immigration. Okay, you have this obvious Afghani Muslim individual, and who specifically is he? Okay, because this is going to lead into what I want to hit on, especially with you, Michael, on what different Catholic charities groups did during the withdrawal from Afghanistan. Obviously, what they did during the whole open border crisis with their facilitation of the illegal invasion that we were kind of complicit in as a Catholic Church. But who was this person? Who was Lakhanwal? Okay, he was from Afghani national, and there's someone who explains it so well, better than any of us could explain, because there was rumors that he was tied to the CIA, that he was trained by the CIA. Who is this individual? Because it's very, very important we understand who this guy was to understand the threat now facing us in our American communities. Let's play that clip from General Flynn.
For one, you served in Afghanistan for a long time. You know the situation with these folks better than anybody, but also you were on Alex Jones' show the other day, did this thing on the color revolution here in the country that was a masterpiece. So let's do Afghanistan first. You know these units, they took, 60 to 100,000 Afghans into this country. What type of debacle was that, sir?
Yeah, first of all, these units, I've worked very closely with them, spent time with many of them. So I know them very, very precisely, I guess. These are people that are so well trained, and as well trained as our Green Beret, as our special forces, as our some most elite military units, because they were trained by principally the CIA, and in the CIA it's called Ground Branch. So these guys are really well trained. The fact that some of them it looks like many of them were brought over to the United States of America without handlers. So that bothers me, because I think that the CIA probably still has hands on many of these people. I would venture to say, and this is if I were Trump sitting in the Oval Office, I'd bring Ratcliffe in by the stack and swivel and say, hey, was this guy under control of the CIA? Are there any others that are under the control currently of the CIA? Because allowing these guys to come in that we so well trained and not having some sort of habeas corpus on them is just, it's outrageous to me. And so my first thing was, when I heard about where this guy came from, I was like, oh my God, this isn't a one-off. This isn't a lone wolf. This is an intentional design to start basically an internal physical component of what I call this color revolution. And this is just one among many that I think that we should expect to see. And again, back to the CIA and who these guys are inside of this country. If we don't know where these people are that came from these units, we're in big trouble, because these are very, very well trained guys who know how to use weapons. They know how to make bombs. They know how to conduct these types of assassination type efforts. They can also do other things too, Steve. They can go attack electric grids. They can go do all kinds of stuff. They can blow up trains. These guys are so well trained, and yet here we are with them in the United States of America. So I think that there's going to be more to come of this, and it breaks my heart to see.
There's going to be more coming. That's from General Michael Flynn, former Director of National Intelligence. Excellent explanation for who this individual was. This is not just some one lone refugee that came in through the whole bunch, the 30,000 or 60,000 that came in. This was somebody who was highly trained by our CIA, okay? And trained to kill, trained to create havoc. He said, like, look, they're at the level of our own best special forces, right? That's how good their training is, right? They know what they're doing. So what do you think when you heard that piece, Michael?
Well, I mean, what stood out to me was the fact that this young individual who came into the country, well, he's not so young, but he came into the country under the Biden administration of, I think it was called the Friends of Afghan, or I can't remember what the specific title was, but it was a part of the withdrawal effort. And the question that we have to ask, he said, because General Flynn said that, we need to know who the handlers are and whether these people have their handlers still interacting with these people from Afghan. Where are they? Who are they? Why are they here? What is their purpose to being here? How are they integrating with society? And the purpose of a handler is to kind of keep tabs and to keep up on who these individuals are, who are they interacting with, where are they going, where are they coming from, what purchases are they making. They're supposed to be keeping track on all of those things. Go ahead. I was just going to say, if this man had a handler, then we need to know why we don't have any kind of accounting as to what this person was up to leading up to what happened in Washington, D.C. on Thanksgiving Day. There should have been some sort of red flag or a warning sign that this person was about to do something radical. But to have no report and no indication that there was a problem here speaks to either complicity or gross negligence.
He gets into that later in the video, actually, because the question is, at one time there was a handler, right? When they were in Afghanistan, obviously the CIA was tracking them, training them, et cetera, to do their thing. Once they came over here, the question is, do they still have a handler, right? Were they directed? Okay, or was this a true guy that just did whatever he wanted, lone wolf, right? And Flynn kind of alludes to that at the end of the piece, which we didn't hear the whole full clip, was that there's a really good chance that this is when he uses the word color revolution, that's what the CIA did in other countries forever, right? They would foment an internal coup, internal revolution, create havoc. Those same tactics applied overseas, we're seeing them over here stateside. And that might be exactly what happened. To go to Washington, D.C., day before Thanksgiving, right by the White House, shoot the National Guard, the very soldiers who were there to kind of create order and stability in the nation's capital, which has had the highest murder rate out of all U.S. cities for a long time, right? So I think this is it's something we should take seriously, right? And it leads to this whole immigration. Like, go back to 2021 August. Trump had in place to eventually wind down the Afghanistan war, right? Probably keep Bagram Air Base, but Biden rushed it. It was a total botched withdrawal, right? Now, one has to think, was it intentional? In the sense of they obviously knew what would happen. You would create a crisis situation where you'd have this influx of refugees and this impossibility to vet all those thousands of people. Did they know that? John, you're a conspiracy theorist. What are you saying? Well, this is the same administration that opened the entire southern border for 4 years and could care less about who came in the country, right? So why is it that far-fetched to believe that forced, dramatic exit where people were hanging on U.S. planes, right, was a preemptive or part of the plan to bring some of these crazies inside? God only knows. The problem is, what we do know is we got the situation in the United States, and I'm believing what General Flynn says. We're probably going to see more of these coordinated attacks.
Here's the thing. During the airlift out of Afghanistan, we brought in 76,000 Afghans out of into the United States outside of the legal refugee system. So these people were not vetted. They were not, and they couldn't be vetted. It was impossible to vet them properly because the records were destroyed. The Afghans, the Taliban, they all destroyed all the records. There was no vetting. There was no way of seeing who these people were, what they were about, where they were coming from, what their ideologies were. There was no way. It was not possible. So the question that this raises and the problem that this raises is now we've got 76,000 individuals that were brought into this country without any vetting. We don't know who they are, what they were doing, where they are now, because obviously we don't have any follow up with the handlers who had a handle on them while they were in Afghanistan. But it raises another question that I have, and I can't quite get an answer from anybody except for friends of ours. Why were these people brought into the United States to begin with? Why do we have a refugee system bringing in Muslims from the Middle East into the United States? It makes no sense. First of all, our culture is completely different, absolutely different. Secondly, there are plenty of neighboring Muslim countries to which these individuals could flee, where they would be perfectly accepted because they're Muslims.
That's right.
Why are they coming to the United States? Why are they going to Europe? And the only answer is because it's an invasion. That's why.
It's an invasion, and this is the Catholic Champion Show. Okay, so we're constantly trying to look at this thing from a Catholic lens about what we as Catholics can do in this country to, first of all, evangelize, right, and do our part to help our nation, right, with the end goal of heaven, of course. What was the role of the Catholic Church in specifically this Afghani invasion, as you called it, Michael, right there in 2021? Well, this was a report that got some traction last week, and it's awesome, and it really makes you reflect. Okay, title of this post is "How Catholic Charities Turn Mass Afghan Resettlement into a Federal Cash Pipeline." This is going to make you kind of upset. When Catholic Charities of Oklahoma City bragged on EWTN, and we'll play that clip in a second, about resettling more Afghans than any other Catholic Charities office in America, they wrapped it in warm language about the stranger, the common good, and serving our brothers and sisters. We've heard that before. But the truth is simple. This wasn't Christian duty. This was a federal business operation, okay? This was never about charity. It was about the money. Catholic Charities didn't, I'm reading this ex-post. Catholic Charities didn't suddenly discover compassion. They discovered funding. They went from resettling, okay? I always preface when I talk about Catholic Charities, there are a lot of great people in Catholic Charities. They do a lot of great work, so don't throw the baby out with bathwater. But in this specific example, this is what happened. They went from resettling 21 arrivals in 12 months to 1,800 Afghans in 6 months. Well, why? Because the Afghan airlift unleashed a flood of federal money from the Biden administration. Those arrivals were not properly vetted. The Taliban had already destroyed IDs, government files, biometric records, blah, blah, blah. Each Afghan generated how much money? $2,275 in federal payments, plus housing funds, food programs, legal services, transportation budget, caseworker salaries, emergency response add-ons. Catholic Charities admitted they expanded from 65 staff to 105 in 90 days. Okay. So they brought in 76,000 Afghans into the U.S. outside of the legal refugee system, and Catholic Charities was one of the biggest distributors.
Yeah.
Let's play that clip and hear it from their own mouths.
Many individual Catholic Charities agencies around the country,
EWTN.
one resettled more Afghan refugees in the United States than any other. We're joined by the executive director of that group, Patrick Raglow, from the Archdiocese of Oklahoma City. Thank you so much for joining us, Patrick. Why Oklahoma City? Tell us how many Afghan refugees your Catholic Charities agency has helped and why your organization was in a position to do that.
Thank you for this opportunity, and thanks to all at EWTN for continuing to pay attention to the needs and opportunities that are present to our Afghan arrivals. Catholic Charities of the Archdiocese of Oklahoma City is a relatively small agency in the middle of the country. I don't know that we brought in more Afghan arrivals than any other resettlement partner in the country, but we certainly did more for any in the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, so the largest number through the Catholic Charities Network. And our agency at the time was the only resettlement agency in the state of Oklahoma City for reception and placement, and we received 1,800 arrivals in 2 cities in 6 months. It was an amazing effort. Prior to that, we had resettled 21 arrivals in 2 cities in 12 months. But Oklahoma City does disasters, wildfires and tornadoes and floods all the time. So we knew that we had the ability, if we treated it like a disaster response and not as a production pipeline problem, that we would lean into our community and we'd be able to get this job done. And it's been really a hard job. It's an ongoing and still difficult job, but it's also been a front row seat to majesty. It's been beautiful.
Well, Catholic Charities couldn't do this alone, especially the legal issues surrounding this. Can you tell us about some of your partners on this refugee resettlement mission?
That's absolutely right. And thank you for asking. We could not have done this on our own. We're a relatively small agency with 65 staff. We ramped up in 90 days to 105 staff. And so about 40 people that we added to the agency. But we leaned into more than 80 congregations, parishes, and denominations of every flavor: Catholic, non-Catholic, Christian, evangelical, secular, Jewish, Muslim. All this community wrapped around these families in a way that ought to be an example all around the world for how we can come together to serve the common good, each from our own faith tradition, each from our own need, recognizing the other as brother and sister, and doing all of that. So it's an amazing thing. 80 different congregations and denominations in Oklahoma City, and a similar number in Tulsa that just leaned in to help this group arrive and thrive.
That's a beautiful show of community gathering to help the stranger coming in.
Oh.
No, it's not. It's not. Okay. It's not. It's not a stranger. A lot of these are enemies. Okay. Yep. They are. That's what they really are. Okay. And that's not charity when you don't do your due diligence to, if you know that the administration is not properly vetting these people, and you are looking at so it's roughly 3,000 per person that they brought in. This specific Catholic Charities of Oklahoma City. Okay, let's do some math. 3,000 per head. They said they brought in 1,800 people. That's $5.4 million. Okay, $5.4 million that they took in. Plus, they were probably given supplemental help for, like the article reference, housing, medical needs, et cetera, right? That's a lot of cash. Okay. So you're bringing in all this cash, which, by the way, that cash did not just come up out of nowhere. That is John's tax dollars. That's Michael's tax dollars. If you're watching the show, that's your tax dollars, which basically just paid that community to bring in these people when they didn't do their due diligence. It's like, that should drive you up the wall, right, Michael?
It does. I mean, look, the fact that I'm being forced to finance the invasion of my own country is disgusting. It's disgusting, but if it happens in the church, we can expect it to happen in society and so forth. The church has been financing the enemies of the cross of Christ for decades through the Catholic Campaign for Human Development.
Mhm.
Those individuals receiving funds from the Catholic Campaign for Human Development are promoting abortion, Marxism, LGBT ideologies, the whole gamut. Okay. They are financing the enemies of the cross of Christ. And in the same respect, through Catholic Charities and the resettlement of those who are enemies to Christianity, professed and proclaimed. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is not, well, we don't really know if they're part of the Soviet Empire. Blah, blah, blah. No, these are individuals who belong to a religious sect that has vowed violence against Christianity, period. Their whole aim is to stamp out both Judaism and Christianity. That's what their whole professed religion is all about. We are financing our own invasion, and we are giving support and comfort to the enemies of Christianity. That's the bottom line.
It makes you wonder, okay? So said it so clearly, right? And that's how we should hear from every Catholic leader, that clear, right? It's enemies of the cross of Christ. They come, they do not assimilate, right? They take over, they threaten, they have a tendency to violence. Okay. Then you look at the Trump administration. Now, you all can critique Trump all day long, as you know, he's not perfect. No one is, okay? But when you see a headline like the following, here's the title of this: all immigration procedures frozen from 19 countries. There's travel ban on them, okay? In the aftermath of the slaying of a National Guard member and the shooting of another Afghan national, the Trump administration has frozen all immigrant applications from citizens from 19 countries. The countries affected since June travel ban include Afghanistan, Chad, Republic of Congo, Haiti, Iran, Libya, Somalia, predominantly Muslim countries, okay? According to Newsmax, Trump administration has also moved to expand the travel ban order, halting green card processing. Why is he doing this? Because Trump sees this clearly, which our own people sometimes don't, right? Yeah. They know this. They know there's something wrong, okay? And that's like, you know, sometimes we get these secular newspaper or these very left-leaning newspapers. They do interviews with us. I just did one yesterday from the London Financial Times, and they always kind of associate us as like Trump MAGA fanatics, or we just love Trump as Catholics, and they try to figure this out. Well, we're not fanatics of Trump, okay? But we do love him because sometimes he says things a lot more clearly than, you know, on different, he makes the tough decisions. Yeah. It's a tough decision to have to deport. Just as it was a very horrible decision to let this in, now we got these communities that are overrun by this stuff. They're threats to individuals like Sarah Beckstrom, who's now dead, and her counterpart who's fighting for his life, okay? Because we didn't do our job. And thank God Trump is doing that.
You know, I think back to what this country did with regard to refugees from communist countries during the 1950s and the 1960s. There were people coming from Cuba. There were people coming from Russia. There were people coming from various other communist-controlled countries, Vietnam even, okay? We had people that were coming over to the United States because they were fleeing from the oppressive regime of communism. And all of those, they were not simply brought into this country and allowed to settle anywhere they wanted and to just come in and hey, here you go. Here's your green card. Here's your, you know, whatever, your financial support card, all that stuff. They were vetted, and they were vetted thoroughly. And they were, their backgrounds were looked into, their understanding of the United States was looked into, and they went through a very long process to obtain any kind of path to citizenship, because the United States had a vested interest in making sure that they were not actually communist agents trying to weasel their way into this country and to subvert her from within. Why aren't we doing the same thing with the Muslims? Why not?
Completely different. I remember almost for sure, I got to ask my parents about this, but growing up, I remember my parents actually sponsored a Vietnamese couple that came over. He fought with South Vietnamese, right? American troops in the 60s came over, and I just remember the way we welcomed them in. And but I remember going to their house and the way they had such true admiration for America, you know, and you could sense it. They kept their roots and whatever, but they assimilated, and even such where My parents ended up sponsoring them again into the Catholic Church through the RCIA program. They became Catholic, and he actually died of a heart attack shortly thereafter, which is kind of a crazy story. Like that's if you're going to come here, you have to love what we stand for, right? And that's not happening. So it's worrisome. And I just, any kind of language just couches that, just ignores that, just welcome the stranger, it should drive us up the wall, right? It's a lie.
Right. And now we have a bunch of Muslims rising up in various cities throughout this country chanting death to America. I'm sorry, but the moment you do that and you raise the flag of of another nation in this country, and you chant your support for that nation, and you call for the death of America, you're out. Absolutely. That should be an automatic just dismissal from this, ejection. Right. And anybody participating in those chants, anybody who's part of the crowd that's calling for those chants, all of you out. That should be an automatic, you're out of here button. I don't see why we should tolerate people who do things like that.
This was intentional. With Color Revolution, there was an attempt. There has been. It's their playbook. They want to completely overwhelm who America is. Okay, they've been doing this. They've been running this playbook to through mass migration. Okay, this is why you have it. Also, this story broke a few days ago. Department of Transportation under Sean Duffy, who's a great guy, Catholic guy, is offering the state of Minnesota an ultimatum, okay? Invalidate illegally issued licenses given to non-resident commercial drivers, yes, that happened, or lose $30 million in federal highway funding. According to the Daily Wire, an audit performed by the Federal Motor Safety Administration discovered that 1/3 of Minnesota's non-domiciled commercial driver's license, like truck drivers, 1/3 of those were unlawfully issued. The state will be given 30 days to revoke the illicit licenses. Okay, so they were giving them non-citizens, people who were not adequately prepared to take to the roads, driving trucks, and we've seen on different stories the effects of this. So I think the latest was that you should find that video. If you have that truck driver in California, the guy's driving a truck. He's from India, and he's ended up being undocumented, but he's literally cooking like a full out Indian meal, right? On the side of this thing. If you just Google, you probably find it. And, you know, I can't laugh at it, because what do you think happens? He slams into two cars head on, like 65 miles an hour, and kills three individuals. Like, this has happened not just once. Okay. So the devil wants chaos. He lives in chaos. He loves that, right? Communist, Marxist forces, you name it. They swim.
What is the mantra of the Freemasons?
What is it?
Ordo ab chaos. Order out of chaos. So they want to create a mess,
create a crisis,
and then create a crisis, and then to create order out of that crisis. It's a very old playbook. But that's exactly what we're up against. I mean, this is why Hillary Clinton said, "Never let a good crisis go to waste."
Absolutely, and it's we're seeing it right now. They want that. They want this distrust in the system, and that's you're having this distrust among communities because they are not on the same wavelength. They aren't, right? So it's serious. We're getting to the end of the show here, wrapping this up. I want to throw out just here quickly about what's going on in Venezuela, because that's significant. Okay, even the Holy Father mentioned it briefly. I'm going to read what he wrote. He was asked about the situation. Obviously, we have probably been following that we have a massive U.S. war fleet. Okay, right outside on Venezuelan borders, and you know, different people have been, what's going on here? What's the real reason we're there? Obviously, Maduro has been told to us that he's a bad individual, right? What's going on there? This is what the Holy Father had to say about this. Regarding Venezuela, at the level of the Bishops' Conference and with the Nuncio, we are trying to find a way to calm the situation. So there you go. I mean, again, not beating a dead horse, and I agree with you, Michael, but the pontiff is working with the local bishops' conference with the nuncio to try to find a way to calm the situation, okay? Seeking, above all, the good of the people, because in these situations, the people who suffer, not the authorities. The Pope goes on. The signals coming from the United States change, and so we must see. Basically, they kind of flip-flops a little bit. On the one hand, it seems that there has been a telephone conversation between the two presidents On the other hand, there is this danger, this possibility that there could be an action and operation, including an invasion of Venezuelan territory, to which the Pope says, again, I believe it is better to seek dialogue within this pressure, including economic pressure. So the Pope calls for economic pressure, but looking for another way to bring about change. That is what the United States decides to do. Go ahead before I give a perspective from, again, from General Flynn, which I thought was spot on what's really going on in Venezuela. Do you have a comment on that, Michael?
Yeah. So again, why, if the Pope doesn't understand or doesn't know what the nature of the conflict is, or what why there is tension between the United States and Venezuela, how can he possibly expect to have a peaceful outcome if he's just going to sit there and say, well, we just want peace? Well, you have to address the problem. You have to say, you have to name it. What is the nature of the conflict? Why is the United States looking towards an aggressive position against Venezuela? Does it just simply have to do with the fact that Maduro is a communist and the United States doesn't like that? No, I don't think that's the only issue that's at hand.
I think I agreed. And I think for me, I was like, okay, what's going on here? We've heard Maduro's bad. We've heard for many years that Maduro is probably emptying out his jails and other stuff, and training aguas from there and exporting these migrants or these gangs into our country with drugs, etc. Here's a really good analysis of what's going on, and we'll throw this X post up from General Flynn. Okay, it reads: all Americans must grasp the gravity of the moment, what's going on in Venezuela, and what this deposition means. We cannot allow China or Russia or a major international Islamic terrorist networks to own beachfront property off our southern border. This block, Trump's actions to date have been sound, but given this new information, our president must do some soul searching with key members of his team. So this is a whistleblower from within Venezuela that was sharing what was really going on in Venezuela, okay, and why the United States is there in the first place. Or we'll get this post thrown up. This blockbuster op-ed comes from a career spy at the top of the Venezuelan regime, where he served as the former head of military intelligence in the National Assembly for nearly a decade. So this is from General Hugo Carvajal Barrios, okay? In it, the general describes how U.S. diplomats, get this is big, U.S. diplomats and CIA officers were paid. This is not conspiracy theory. Again, this comes from the former director of national intelligence, General Flynn, is retweeting this from a whistleblower general inside Venezuela. Big stuff. He describes how U.S. diplomats and CIA officers were paid to assist Chavez and Maduro to get out of power? No, remain in power. He also describes, and this is where it gets even bigger, how the election software Smartmatic developed in Venezuela is used to alter elections. Okay, you remember all that conspiracy talk we heard for many years in 2020 about Smartmatic based in Venezuela, changing elections? Okay, that's real. President of the United States actually retruths that, something to that effect, yesterday or 2 days ago. Okay,
I'm pretty sure Mike Lindell was sued for saying this very thing.
I think a few people were, even like Newsmax and others, right? So, okay, so the letter is a strategic warning. Here we go. This technology was later exported abroad, including to the United States. Okay. This letter is a strategic warning from a man who spent decades inside the command structure of a hostile foreign power. General Carvajal, confirms what many of us have stated repeatedly. The Maduro regime functions as a fully integrated narco-terrorist apparatus conducting an unconventional campaign inside of and against the United States of America. Pause it before I read the end of that. Again, so they were exporting their stuff to the United States. How did they do that? Through Biden's open border. Who was one of the number one NGOs helping this? Connected. Catholic Charities. Guys, it's coming around. You got to wake up and learn. I'm like, you can't believe everything you see. You got to do your own research. This is what's going on, okay? Flynn continues. General Carvajal details how Venezuela weaponized cocaine and coordinated operations with FARC, I'm not sure what that is, Cuban intelligence, and Hezbollah, how it built and exported violent criminal networks like Tren de Agua into the United States, how its intelligence services infiltrated American institutions for more than 20 years, how Smartmatic, the voting machine, was developed to keep the regime in power forever. Sound familiar? Carvajal now states that President Trump's policies were acts of essential national defense, and that he's prepared to provide further classified details. We as Americans must demand more transparency about the role of a rogue, deep state elements inside of our own national security system who have been or are currently protecting the Venezuelan regime and have been for decades. Okay? Guys, right before the show, my team and I were talking about color revolution. We were debating what exactly does color revolution mean. So we were, let's look this up. Let's get a proper definition. Okay. Color revolution, where a term was a series of often nonviolent protests and accompanied attempted or successful changes of government and society that took place in post-Soviet states. The aim of the color revolutions was to establish Western-style democracies. They were primarily triggered by election results widely viewed as falsified, okay, conducted by our own intelligence services, okay? Think Iran, okay, when we flipped that, 1970s, color revolution, we were behind that. The point of this whistleblower is to say, yes, they were doing it in Venezuela, but it was our own intelligence agencies, the CIA, who was working with Maduro to keep him in power and export Smartmatic into the United States to subvert our elections. Michael, go.
This is where I come back to, why is the Pope inserting himself in trying to broker peace and say that, well, you know, maybe resort to economic sanctions. You can't utilize economic sanctions against a country that is trying to alter your electoral process, which is an overt act of war, to change your electoral process and to alter who gets into office and who doesn't get into office. And quite honestly, in the state of Virginia, I question the results of our own recent elections. Abigail Spanberger suddenly rising to the top. And by the way, she's a CIA person. Right. So you start looking at this kind of thing. I think that somebody needs to go into Venezuela, take their database and say, okay, let's look at the Virginia elections. Let's look at what happened in New Jersey. Let's look at some of the other election results and see if there's any kind of mention of those states and vote flips taking place to change the electoral process in this country. It was an overt act of war. And the fact that we now have somebody from Venezuela saying that, yes, we've been doing this, we have this technology, it's been used in the United States, not just questions. This is not a matter of trying to, strong arm a country that's being run by somebody who's a tin pot dictator. This is an individual who has a very dangerous piece of technology and is now being accused of having used it against the United States with the assistance of three-letter agencies within our own country.
Precisely. And does it make there's a war going on, okay? There's a two-tiered system of justice right now. The battle is within, okay? It completely is. We have our external enemies, sure, but what's happening, and I think it's characterized the last 60 years since 1963, November 22nd, when JFK was shot, was this war from within, from our own deep state, whatever you call it, anti-American forces, okay? And for a long time, it's been able to hide underneath so much. Trump has done so much to expose that, and I think it's incredible to see what's happening now as it comes, because it's dark. It really is. And you have did you see, Michael, the video of the 7 Democrats? Maybe we could pull that up. But it's a 2-minute video of the Democrats who basically challenged American servicemen to disobey orders. Did you see that clip or no?
Oh yeah, I saw that.
It's so if we get that in time, I'm going to play it really fast because what's going on there, that's big. I mean, Trump was very furious. He calls the Dems video to service members
it's seditious.
Seditious behavior, punishable by death. That's Trump words. We have that video. If we can play, it's like a 2-minute video, but we're going to pull it. I want you to see just what is going on right now, the war from within. It's not Democrats versus a Republican. It's far from over. I think the Marjorie Taylor Greene exit kind of showed the control of the Uni Party, right? And I give Marjorie Taylor Greene a lot of credit for who she is, for standing up, even to President Trump on certain issues, right? Because we don't worship anyone, but we worship the truth, which is Jesus Christ. So you got to be faithful to that, no matter who your person is, right? We're gonna play that clip right now as we get to the end of this show. Go ahead.
Senator Alyssa Slotkin.
Senator Mark Kelly.
Representative Chris DeLuzio.
Congresswoman Maggie Goodlander.
Representative Chrissy Houlihan.
Congressman Jason Crow. I was a captain in the United States Navy.
Former CIA officer.
Former Navy.
Former paratrooper and Army Ranger.
Former intelligence officer.
Former Air Force.
We want to speak directly to members of the military
and the intelligence community
who take risks each day
to keep Americans safe.
We know you are under enormous stress and pressure right now.
Americans trust their military.
But that trust is at risk.
This administration is pitting our uniformed military
and intelligence community professionals
against American citizens.
Like us. You all swore an oath
to protect and defend this Constitution.
And right now, the threats to our Constitution aren't just coming from abroad,
but from right here at home.
Our laws are clear. You can refuse illegal orders.
You can refuse illegal orders.
You must refuse illegal orders.
No one has to carry out orders that violate the law
or our Constitution.
We know this is hard
and that it's a difficult time to be a public servant.
But whether you're serving in the CIA,
the Army,
or Navy,
the Air Force,
your vigilance is critical.
And know that we have your back.
Because now, more than ever,
the American people need you.
We need you to stand up for our laws,
our Constitution,
and who we are as Americans. Don't give up.
Don't give up.
Don't give up.
Don't give up the ship.
That's pretty. That's pretty bold. They're literally calling for the troops to, obviously, ultimate oath is to God, of course. But there's more. That's a signal. What they're doing is signaling to their own people within the government, which there are many, to resist, to continue to resist. Okay.
Yeah, I wonder where they were when Biden was forcing all the military personnel to take the shot.
Right there, promoting it, probably taking checks. Right. So it's there's different probably reasons why they actually released the video now. One reason is they're angry with what's going on in Venezuela. Okay, and one has to wonder. Mark Kelly he's a senator here from Arizona. Like, okay, so he's upset. Why is he upset? Is he upset that there's that they're getting in the bottom of these voting machines?
Yep.
that election between him and Kerry Lake was very very suspicious, right? So there's a lot of things coming to light, and I think people start to squirm as it comes to the light, and I think it shows the seriousness of what we got right now, and obviously need for prayer. Final thoughts, Michael, as we wrap the show up.
No, taking it all together and looking at the situation from 1,000-foot perspective, we as Catholics, we have an obligation to focus on Christ, to draw souls to Christ. I think that a lot of the wind and the waves that come with so much focus on the world and from a geopolitical standpoint, from an economic standpoint, from a religious standpoint, we can't get so caught up in this issue or that issue as we look towards the truth. We focus on truth, who is a person, and we try to draw as many souls to the truth as we possibly can. And it would be easier if our hierarchy followed suit, or rather led from the front instead of pushing from behind, and said, no, our focus is on Christ. Our salvation is in Christ. If we don't draw souls to Christ, and if souls are not drawn to Christ, a multitude will be lost. And there's a treasury to be gained by storing up souls in heaven. Yes, there's an importance with regard to how we fight and to who we fight and understanding and identifying the enemy. But if we are not willing to fight for souls and to keep our focus on Christ, then everything else is for naught. There's no point to it.
There is a lot going on, and the focus has to be for souls. And your point about leading, okay, we'll do our best. We can't wait for everyone else to. We can point fingers all day, complain about this leader, that leader not doing this. The other day, we got to do our part, okay? I'm going to end on a positive note, giving you an example, because you can get lost in what's happening on the world scale, okay, and forget about your local communities, what you can do today, right now. And I'm going to use this example, okay? This is one of my fellow parishioners here. I might have mentioned his name, probably would not want me to mention his name. Kind of a humble guy. He's taken upon himself to do what he can in his community. What does he do? Every single month, he organizes these rosary rallies. Okay. It's public rosary rally at Desert Horizon Police Park, Saturday, December 6th. Next one is this Saturday. Okay. Very, very simple. Okay. These are actually one of the flyers, and he's been doing it now for like a couple years. He has a team of people to help him out. I mean, and they'll just go totally grassroots, morning mass, whatever. They go to different parishes around, and they just pass out these flyers and invite people to pray and pray and pray. And what that does, it's what I love most about this. It's not let's gather, not that that's bad. Gather at 7 a.m. in the church to pray the rosary, all of us together in the corner of the church. That's beautiful, amazing, of course. But it's the public nature of this. If we are not public in our faith, which Catholics for Catholics is so big about, okay, taking your faith to the streets, literally sometimes, because if we don't, the other side does it. Islam, look at you in Dearborn or New York City. They take over the street to pray. That's what they want to do. They naturally do that. Faith has to be expressed. If not, it dies. So I love this. Like, look, don't overcomplicate this. Maybe you could do something as simple as this. Maybe you start off with 10 people that show up, 20 people, but you're teaching everyone in your local community that there are a bunch of Catholics who are darn convinced about their faith that they were willing to show it publicly and bring their statues out. And I think that's awesome. We need absolutely more of that. This has been a special edition of Catholic Champion. A lot going on in the world. Let's end with a special prayer to St. Michael the Archangel, defend all of us in battle for what's going on here in America and the world, and pray for our Pope. Pray for the Pope, as Our Lady always asks us to do. Pray for him. He needs. He's the vicar of Christ. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. St. Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him. We humbly pray, and do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, cast in hell Satan and all the wicked spirits who prowl about the world, seeking the ruin of souls. Amen. God bless you all. See you next week. Fight on.